Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in. Today is an incredibly relevant day for Florida with Pride Month starting soon. We're all here to recognize the day that is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia here in Florida. Unfortunately, of course, there's a lot to talk about in terms of what our state legislature has done, realistically putting a lot of these phobias into our laws. And so we're here to talk with activists in the LGBTQ community to discuss this really important day and to hear more about what the path lies ahead for Florida. So with that, I'd like to take a minute to thank Contigo Fund, who is a partner in this to bring this really important event together. And I'll go ahead and start with some of our panelists. Happy to introduce Ricardo, who's here as an activist and member of the LGBTQ community and Pulse survivor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation, David.
And next, we have Michael Fitro, who, of course, has gotten to be a part of FOF in the past and is here as an activist as well. Thanks for joining. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's great to be with folks from my home state and where I got my start fighting for LGBTQ rights. And I'm excited to discuss this and help folks be able to understand how they can get involved and how they're able to make sure that we can protect LGBTQ youth, individuals, and make sure that we put the fire under the feet of folks who seem to be dragging it as slow as molasses. So glad to be here.
Awesome. And of course, last but not least, we are joined by Juan Moore, who is our South Florida Regional Organizing Director. Thanks for joining. How are you?
What's up, y'all? I'm good. Good to see everybody. Ricardo, Mike, thanks for coming out today. Thank you for having me. I'm ready to talk. Those of you in the audience, feel free to comment. Feel free to share. A matter of fact, if you want to hear more from us, we'd like to get to 1,000 comments. So if you get to 1,000 comments, we might do a podcast, start a podcast. So glad to have you guys. David, let's talk. I'll throw it back to you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we'll go ahead and really bring it to life in terms of the first item that we really want to talk about. This is the day.
We're also to recognize the day.
LGBTQ phobia, and really, it's important to highlight that these are still an issue. That hate crimes have been rising with anti-LGBTQ legislation passing, and so really want to just go ahead and start by asking some folks across the panel, really with what do you think still needs to be done to achieve an end to the phobias that we've seen against the LGBTQ community? And I guess we can start with Michael from our panel.
I guess there's a couple things I think we could do in order to stop the homophobia, transphobia, pretty much LGBTQ phobia in the state. But first I want to address that I think it's less of them actually being afraid in terms of what a phobia is, being afraid or irrationally afraid. I think it's a hate. I think it's a irrational judgment against individuals based on something that isn't their business. And so for me, at least in my personal experience as a gay person, I survived conversion therapy in high school. I was in a way, went to these different programs, and it was pretty intensive, to say it in a very professional way. And then we got it banned in Tampa back in 2017. And I think one thing that would be a way to start eradicating the institutionalized LGBTQ phobia and hate and legislation against us and our dehumanization would be to start from the get-go, making sure that laws are enacted that recognize that not only are we not mentally ill, incapacitated, but that we have the freedom to not be, whether it's abused or, physically, mentally, whatever it may be, that we are changeable, that we are not human, that it is a choice, that it may be anything, that we have laws that respect our individual right to be ourselves. And I think that there's so much that could go on, but and then the Don't Say Gay bill, or, everything that's going on right now, I think some of the ways that we'd be able to start eradicating the power that is held by folks that are wielding it over LGBTQ folks would be enacting laws that not only protect our rights and our liberties as individuals to self-determination and our freedom to be ourselves, but then also, protecting our ability and our right to be able to freely express who we are, especially, children. Grown men and women should not be spending their time enacting laws to target children. Not only is that an absolute waste of time and totally just speaks volumes of their character, but it's dangerous. And so I think that protecting children from the bottom up and making sure that we protect the rights that the constitutional liberties we have, where someone like me couldn't be forced to go somewhere to physically be let's say abused or altered in order to try to change who I am, to make sure that we have the same rights to our life and our privacy and our own autonomy. I think that would be a good start, because as big as of the project that sounds, it really comes down to the fact that at that point, we don't have ourselves. We don't have the right to really live freely or be unbothered or not be, physically removed from where we are and sent somewhere to turn into something that others in the environment find appropriate. So I think that enacting laws that protect our right to self-determination, autonomy, and that we are who we are as folks that are not mentally capacitated, not mentally ill, that we are folks just like anyone else, I think that would be a good start, as well as canceling these stupid don't say gay bills. And being able to make sure that wherever we are, however we are, whenever we are, that we can be our true authentic selves, and that it is not a crime to be able to simply exist among other people. I think that would be a good start.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, unfortunately, and we've seen so much like hate being spewed, particularly here in Florida after the Don't Say Gay bill and all the really nasty rhetoric that became a national rhetoric now about how LGBTQ people are pedophiles, are groomers, are looking to hurt kids. We should have read the damn bill, even though we did, and we were right in calling it out as it is a bill, an anti-LGBTQ bill. But taking a time, but I fear, unfortunately, that there's always going to be people who are going to be seeking to oppress LGBTQ people, and we cannot ignore this fact. It's like we make strides, and then we have this elected officials at the local level who are constantly seeking to rally up their bases to keep their political power and using us LGBTQ people as their punching bags, as their targets, unfortunately. And for them it works. And how do we respond to that? Um, I think we have to, as a gay Puerto Rican whose primary language is Spanish, that survived the biggest attack against the LGBTQ community here in Florida and in the United States, and who fights for voting rights in a state that in a state where the government continuously batches LGBTQ people and enacts barrier to our freedom as voters. Um, I find myself at all those intersections of, damn, how do we make this better? Why do we have to continue fighting against homophobia and biphobia and transphobia? It's 2022, but we have to continue doing it, and we have to continue focusing on leadership development and opening up more spaces for more voices, so that we can push against all the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. And we saw it, even though it was reacting to something super negative as the Don't Say Gay bill, we saw how students from all across the states were really took on leadership roles and were really fighting against this bill that directly affects them. It's sad that students have to give up their time from enjoying and growing up just as students and have to fight literally for their lives. But at the same time, it's hopeful to see that this new generation of incoming leaders are willing to fight for our communities.
Absolutely. And I just want to second and third what Michael and Ricardo said there. I think it's obvious that we have a lot of haters in Florida, right? Especially in our leadership, nothing but haters. And it's dangerous. It's been proven to be dangerous with acts just like that took place at Pulse nightclub that Ricardo could attest to. And we're seeing things back in the past. I think one of the most prevalent cases. I was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I can remember Matthew Shepard. And recently, what happened a couple of days ago in Buffalo, New York, once you start spewing out hateful rhetoric and your leaders are supporting this, it's inevitable for idiots, thugs, criminals to take and utilize those moments. So I totally agree. I think we need to recognize not only that this is happening, but when it's time to vote, then they tend to pander people of color and the LGBTQ community and say, hey, now we're your friends. We need your vote. So we need to know and recognize, for one, we do have haters. DeSantis being one of the biggest ones. I'm going to call you out by name. Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, and then their followers. So we as people need to first not only recognize that this is happening, and then be ready to fight against these things by getting out to the polls and voting these leaders out. Because I want to remind everybody, I live in Miami. We have some of the biggest Pride events in Florida. Shout out to the Pride event down there in Orlando. I know you guys have a big one over there, Tampa. Not only that, the community is driven by a lot of these members. The community are made up by the LGBT community. So we got to take care of our brothers and sisters out there. We got to get these leaders out of here for sure.
I don't know if you saw Juan, because you mentioned you were from Wyoming, and how I think it was yesterday or the day before at the Wyoming University commencement speech, the U.S. Senator Cynthia Loomis, she tried to attack the trans community. She made some transphobic remarks on stage during the commencement ceremony, and she was immediately booed by everybody there present. But like, she literally took that great day for people who are graduating to spew transphobic remarks at an event that wasn't even a political event. So the hate is out there now. It's not hidden behind, it's openly out there. At any moment that they get the stage, they use it to spread hate against the community. And it was good to see that the students did not put up with it and they immediately booed her. But it shouldn't have happened, in the first time.
Absolutely. You know what it is, Ricardo, is we're continuously, as voters, as citizens, getting a whole bunch of bull crap that we do not want, right? And so when you see those moments where people are booing, that is the sentiment of most Floridians, of most everybody with a thinking brain, right? We shouldn't be choosing the rights for women's vaginas, right? We shouldn't be setting back people's rights to votes. We shouldn't be setting back while people of color are disfranchised. And we should assure hell that should be sitting back while these leaders get richer and progress to be presidents and whatever they want to be while we suffer. So you're absolutely, I'm glad, I agree with you that I did see that moment where people did too. I also saw another moment where people were tearing down Trump flags at the baseball game. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And again, we need to get this out of here for real.
Yeah, well, there's so much that still needs to be done, and a lot that we're really, of course, relying on our elected officials from, and something that we really need to keep in mind when getting involved this year, when of course casting our ballots this year. And so I really want to kind of bring it back to all of us that have gotten in one chance or another to work with advocacy in the LGBT community, is to really ask, when did your work in this advocacy begin? What did you feel was your call to action to really get involved in this work? I think, for me, and thinking of the space that allies really need to take leadership in on these issues, is to just sort of obviously think of times, that I was that so many people that I'd met that I came to look up to were in my college days, gay men that I got to observe, see how people were touched and impacted by the 2015 decision to legalize gay marriage, and just the landmark that was. But then moving on and seeing that there was still so much more progress to be done, and really to just take joy in the victories that are on the one hand for all of us, but that on the other hand specifically impact this community. And so I really wanted to ask out to the panel, what was your draw into the space to really take action and organize?
If I may take the gavel for a second, I think, well, for myself, the first time I got involved in LGBTQ advocacy was when I was 14 in high school, and we started our school's first GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, back in high school, when we had like the LGBTQ community, gay, straight, and it's like supposed to build a coalition between both sides of, at that time, what we believe was the spectrum. Of course, we have much more information now, and the ability to see further than what we even knew then. And so I helped found my high school's first GSA, got approval from the school, so that way we could have students from the straight community, the LGBTQ community come together to build an understanding of one another and a relationship that would be able to take away some of either the divisiveness or more of the, I don't know how to put it other than like this this primal divide, because the issue I feel that the LGBTQ community faces, the importance is making sure that we pass legislation to make sure that we are protected under the Constitution or law that codifying our rights and our liberties as anyone else. But the issue that we face goes beyond actual government and goes into humanity, and it goes into a century-long, millennia-long, time where it's just been something that we've always faced in almost every culture, every period of time. And so it was really exciting for me to be able to be part of that at a young age, because at that time, not only, was Don't Ask, Don't Tell not repealed, gay marriage wasn't a thing. I mean, it was back, before all this stuff. And so it was a big deal for us to get approval to do that. And then once we did, and we started getting more and more and more people and building those friendships and coalitions and understanding that we're all pretty much in a lot of ways similar, the same. It's just, this is who I love, that's who you love, kind of breaking down those walls and barriers. That's how I got my start. And now it's kind of cool when I go back to like schools I've ever been to or visit, and it's like a totally different world where like that doesn't even need to almost exist anymore, because it's just normal, or this is just, they're this and they're who they are and they're whatever. And it's just like, wow, it's a totally different world. And it, it all starts from where we can in our own little corner of the world. And that's how I started. So very grateful for it.
Well, for me, I moved to Orlando from Puerto Rico back in 2015. And when I moved here, I started working with the immigrant community in Apopka. So I was working, teaching English as a second language to immigrant adults. And from that, I started doing voter registration with a nonprofit here in Orlando. And then following the 6/12 shooting, I started working to provide assistance with those that were directly impacted by the tragedy. So making sure that, assistance was language accessible, and that we would continue doing outreach and making sure that people had connection to the services that were available by different entities in the community. And then from that, just kind of like kept myself involved in working with like newly arrived Puerto Ricans that were affected by Hurricane Maria and who were moving to Florida or had no other resources and were seeking shelter here in Florida. And from that sort of like transition into voting rights, which I've been working on for the past, I want to say 4 years or so here in Florida. But with a particular focus on language access and accessibility overall across the state. So I think it's all being like connected and in an area of making sure that communities that English is not their first language, or who are new here to Florida, have access to the services and to the rights to be able to participate in elections, to be able to receive what everybody else is able to. So
Awesome.
I've been doing this for a long time, David. So without exposing my age, right? But I've been organizing for about 15 plus years. But about 11 years ago, my uncle came out, right? And my uncle is my hero. He was the first man in our family to graduate. He's a doctor, a surgeon. And so for my family is a great family, very accepting. But what my question was to him is, why did it take so long for him to come out? And as he explained the things that he had to face, right, I dove into being a better ally through the work that I was already doing. And so that's how I started, and pledged never to stop until we, of course, are in a better space. And that seems like it's going to be a while, especially here in Florida, but that's how I started.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. And of course, really, definitely, of course, to bring it back to Florida. And as we're saying here, and I wanted to highlight the legislation that was passed this year. And we got to talk about it a little bit earlier, the Don't Say Gay bill, and really just as a part of a series of anti-LGBTQ legislation that didn't just pass in Florida, but around the country. Wanted to open the question really around with the current Republican administration and these targeting legislation towards students. How do you see this impacting LGBTQ youth? And I wanted to start here with Efrain, who just got to join us from Contigo Fund, and I want to get a chance to introduce and get your thoughts. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Efrain Garcia Deidam. I am a board member with the Contigo Fund. With everything that has happened so far, I want to put my age out there, being 28, it kind of throws me back into my high school years and feeling, lost in everything, bullied and everything. And now fast forwarding to 2022, being able to have been part of the community, seeing how growth can happen and being part of the change, but then seeing all these bills and laws come into effect here in Florida, it gives me a sense of like, I kind of know how they're feeling because I felt that way. And I felt that way without any bills. Now imagine these bills being passed and, this new generation of people being what we call woke. They're more understanding, they're more in tune. So it definitely draws a setback, but I also feel like it's a bad thing for them, for a negative feeling, but I feel like it's making our youth a little bit more resilient and stronger because they're wanting to fight back. We have had many schools around Florida that, high school students and even middle school students have walked out in protest of the Don't Say Gay bill. I feel needs to happen is we need to take this time to do action and, educate them on how to properly advocate, how to properly bring awareness to either schools and everything and continue pushing forward. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, well, definitely thanks for sharing. And I know, just highlighting that this is the reality and something to speak out against as we, recognize the day against homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, and all the attacks on the LGBT community. So I wanted to really transition really to the accountability that we're really wanting to highlight here. And we'll start with let's start at the top and recognizing that there's a lot of federal protections that are not currently enacted that we need. And in terms of who we can call on, we're looking at our Florida senators, right? We have the senators Rubio and Scott, and of course specifically Rubio with regards to his statements back in 2016 that he was initially going to just be a one-term senator, but then all of a sudden Pulse happened and he was like, I can't leave now. Really just kind of under the impression that this must have been important. And 6 years later, where has he been on the issue of LGBTQ equality? Where has he been for our students? Where has he been for our youths? And what, if anything, has he done to stand with the LGBT community and open it up to the panel in terms of what sort of allies do we have in the Florida legislature?
Well, to your question about Senator Rubio being for the LGBTQ community, if you find out, let me know, because his record speaks for himself.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the
exactly.
same thing, right? Unless he stands with the LGBT community, and maybe he's in the closet. I don't know, and maybe that's where he's at. Is we can't find him. Again, and I wanted to also say, David, that I know for a fact, as a Black man, and when I was a student in a system that isn't too much for a young Black boy, that I was affected in a numerous amount of ways, even though, oftentimes I would smile, or oftentimes my grades would not reflect that. But being in a position of being a minority, in any position, whether you're Black, whether you're white, whether it's your orientation, your sexual orientation, it does affect you. And especially when there is no one there who's older to be able to help you or to understand what you're going through. So I think, I can't say for sure, but I'm absolutely positive to a certain extent that I'm sure that negatively that it does have a very huge impact on a lot of students. And we may never know how big that impact is right now, because there's legislation that holds teachers accountable for having those kind of conversations. But I'm sure that if you look into some of these households, that a lot of these kids feel bullied, intimidated, and very scared now with the current legislation that's in play. I, as an adult, am, right. I look at the rent. I look at us going back on voting rights. I look at, my wife, my mom, the women I work with here, and look at where their rights are as women's. I'm scared as an adult, so I'm sure that some of these students are scared. And so the question is where is Rubio? For a lot of people, the only reason I'm asking where is Rubio is for me as an organizer, as a regional director, is to be able to pass out some pink slips so he can get the hell out of that seat.
Yeah, to follow that up, I mean, we are in such a particularly, when I say interesting, I don't mean positively, but just to live in a time where we actually are living in a moment where the actual government is attacking and specifically targeting children and LGBTQ individuals. I remember going to school and I knew I'd get bullied, before conversion therapy, anything, you're going to get bullied, these things which aren't okay, but things that are, that are intergenerational, that are part of human nature and all that. But I knew, at least in one part, I wasn't also afraid of the fact that the government that I live under, that governs my life and my environment, was passing legislation to actually take away my rights and dehumanize me and disable me to be able to have the same freedoms even as a child, even as a teenager. Imagine that kind of pressure. And so where's Rubio for the LGBTQ community? I mean, I don't even know where Rubio is. I mean, I think that his empty suit and his empty seat in the Senate where, he never shows up and never votes is also as empty as his promises. It's just nothing. It's just a pail of absolute emptiness, and it's abyss of just broken promises and things said in order to placate individuals and people and, make people believe that he would fight for their liberties or their justices as much as anyone else's, because that's what you do when you are an elected representative in a democratic society. Is even if I'm not the same as you, even if we're very different, intrinsically or anything to the every degree, you deserve to have every single right as much as I do to live, your most authentic life. And unfortunately, he has failed the people over and over again in fulfilling that duty. And I don't know where Rubio is, but what I do know where he isn't is where he should be, fighting for the people, for the children, for LGBTQ individuals to be able to have the same protected rights, and stopping the government from actually going forward with policy to strip away even further our rights, our liberties, and our ability to be free, to be safe, and to live a life where we're not looking over every shoulder wondering if someone's going to do something or this or that, or if the government's going to come and do something. You know, if they're willing to do this and he's willing to be complacent in this moment, down the road, God forbid, what would he be willing to do to be complacent if they took it even further? So Rubio is not where he should be. It's maybe where he feels like he should be, but it's certainly not where he should be for the people fighting for everybody. So I think, you know, this election season, every election season, people should really think about, you know, if you have a child, if you have, you know, family that you love, or anybody, you know, at this point in the world, everybody just about has someone that they love that is LGBTQ, or knows somebody, or knows someone who does. And it's time that people really look at each other, all of us, and recognize the humanity in one another. And then we start trying to elect that humanity to represent us, to make sure that we all are protected and that we all have the ability to live a safe and happy and healthy life. But that person is not Marco Rubio. So, but he's proven that in a million other things. And somehow he got reelected again at that point. And he, you know, will continue to disappoint if people still have hopes that he would actually do something. So empty promises, empty suit, Marco Rubio.
And you mentioned something very important about electing. You know, it's not just for these high federal offices, but also for your local elected officials who, you know, craft the policies that affect your day to day. And there's so many elected positions here in Florida that sometimes people are not even aware that they are elected positions. And then because of lack of turnout, because of the voter suppression that's constantly happening in this state, then we get into those, well, we end up in those positions with people who further push the agendas of continue to marginalize LGBTQ people and continue using us as, again, as their punching bag so that they can keep riling up their bases.
I would like to say, like, after listening to everybody, I think right now we're discussing, the where's Rubio. I think it's time that we moved on to the next step and ask ourselves, how are we gonna find him? How are we gonna pull him out of hiding? I would like to just say, to anybody that's out there listening, the call of action was yesterday. It's not today. It's not tomorrow. It's been there. Um, Regardless of something very important, we like to support officials that we feel will be a good fit, but we only push them as far as we want them to go, because once it gets very serious, we all of a sudden forget the real mission and the real goal, and we just move on, and they're left there hanging. For us, community leaders, we need to stop doing that. We need to, if we're going to push for someone, we need to be there, go hard or go home. Don't even lie to them. Push, 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 push. And also for other organizations out there, it's time that we stop just, kind of like sugarcoating things. Let's be real. We need officials in office that are going to support us, because we can't continue to do rallies and scream our voices out there and stuff like that, and nothing is getting done, because at the end of the day, some of us are at fault because we only show up when it's convenient. We need to be showing up every single time. Excuse me, every single time. We need to be doing what we can, educating. We have a lot of people turning 18 years of age that are going to be legally allowed to vote. They don't know what they're going to be voting for. Some people think it's a joke. Some people think it's funny because of TikTok. Let's educate them. Let's educate them on who the officials that are running for office without endorsing, but letting them know, who we feel would be a good fit. We need to kind of like guide them in what the voting is, because some people, I've heard it. I have family of my own that was 18 at one point, and well, I want to vote for this person because everybody else is, or I want to vote for this person because it's funny. No, it's a serious matter. For example, for not just for our LGBT trans, we have people that are still immigrants that are also trans, and all of these bills just coming down on us, it's a mess. But the call to action is not today anymore. That call of action was yesterday. And again, I just want to reiterate, if we're going to do change, we need to go 100% or 110% all the way, and not just say, well, today I'm gonna, say, go David, go, and then when things get serious, I'm just gonna be like, oh, I'm not here no more because I'm enjoying my best life. No, all the way. Either we go all the way or we just don't say nothing at all.
And really quickly, if I may piggyback off that, that just made me think of something really important. I was watching a interview the other day about someone talking about elections and traveling around the world. And, we say that, oh, we're so lucky to, be born in America and we have all these freedoms and people come here. But then the thing is that, those are also things that can be, taken away. I feel like people, I feel like the complacency becomes very real and very saturated when, we get these big wins, we got gay marriage, or like when, like we're facing right now with Roe versus Wade and the possibility of that, the actually very real, devastating, scary, dystopian world that we live in, that is going to be taken away. I feel like we feel as though once we get certain wins or certain things like, oh, it's over, it's done, okay, we got it, move on. Like, no. In a democracy, in where we live, it is a constant fight every single day, a battle to protect our rights and our liberties, because just as much as they came in and were there, equally so, depending on who controls the Congress and the government or who sits on the Supreme Court, they can be taken away. And, I grew up in a Republican family. I was a Republican before I became a Democrat. And we, at least in my family, when I say we, I'm speaking in past thought, they train to never miss an election, never miss down to a local election, even for, whatever it may be. It is so important that we recognize our power as people, that we are the ones that elect these folks in, no matter how they gerrymander, no matter what they do. The people, if we get together and recognize our power and mobilize and do everything we can in all of our power and privilege, which everyone has a different scale of, we are able to take our power back and make sure that we are protected as people. We are the ones that still bring these people in office. They are dependent upon our vote. And so it is true that there is a level of, not a, I guess, sadness, or like not a complacency, but like being, unmotivated or feeling disenfranchised, which is valid. But that then when people say, like, whether it's their vote doesn't matter or whether it's, nothing will make a difference, it actually will, because every single individual that runs is depending on a vote, and they campaign so hard because they know if they don't, they will not win. And so I think one thing that, we'd be able to do to make sure that we can combat this and make sure that we are able to stop people like Rubio or other individuals who want to get into government to actually limit other people's freedoms and, go forward and become a fascist Florida, Florida fascism or whatever it may be. We have the ability and the power to make that difference. And it is our responsibility to take that up and make sure that people like him, who are at one point equally part of the same constituency that we are, that decided to run and do whatever, that we take that back and we remind these people that you work for us. And also, if you don't represent us properly, if you decide to try to take away our rights and our liberties, we're going to take you out of office. That is not what we're here for. We have the power. You do not control us. You answer to us. We elect you, and equally so, we can unelect you. And we have to motivate that message, motivate people to be inspired by that message, that we actually have the ability to prevent us from going further down this road. But it takes a lot of work. It's not easy, not saying that, but that, it's about true mobilization and getting people out there to vote and taking every single ounce of opportunity that we have to be involved and creating that culture. Because in our culture, I found throughout my life that it's almost like government or politics is separate. Like, oh, there's people to handle that. Oh, it's going to take care of itself. Oh, it's going to, whatever. But no, it doesn't. And so we're faced with that with Roe versus Wade. Now we're facing this in Florida with, anti-LGBTQ bills and don't say gay bills and all these other things. We in a greater form have the power to be able to take this away with a lot of work and organizing and the ability to also, like, for instance, Michelle, Rayner Goolsby, who's a Black LGBTQ, state representative, a historic, we need to start also making sure that we elect folks that are like us to put them into office around these other folks to remind them not only do we exist, but we also can hold power, and we're here to keep you in check. And so it's also electing and promoting and mobilizing our community to elect our community and support them while they're in office, and make sure that we put our money where our mouth is, or our volunteering where our feet are, and making sure that we do everything we can to preserve what is our democratic republic and our democracy, to make sure that we have it not only for ourselves, but a future where, the little ones we're watching grow up, and even for ourselves, that we are able to say that we not only did all we could, but that we have our rights. And so supporting people like her and other folks in office and otherwise, and every election down to even the most local, whatever it may be, it all starts at home. It all starts local. And so it's not that far away. It's not distant. It's right around the corner. So taking the time to do due diligence to find out that information, because oftentimes or it's kept away on purpose, or it's, it's not promoted, these elections, and they're kept quietly. And generally it's older folks and other people that come out to those things that control this local, government and otherwise. Get involved, get active, don't miss an election, and do everything you can to find out what is where and what is what, to make sure that you can make your voice heard. That is something I think we can do too.
Well, can't echo that enough, and really want to jump in to add, like Michael, you were saying, time is our most precious resource, and these conversations that we need to have, in the one sense, they'd be best had yesterday, but also they can still be had today. And the time that we have here is really so important that we are going to be giving calls to action and giving regular calls to action over these coming months. And so one of the important things that we want to highlight as we close this space out is to talk about what's coming next. And I think many folks are aware of, or hopefully become aware of, the fact that just this upcoming week is going to be a new special legislative session, and now it's meant to be around housing insurance. And so that's what may very well be the outcome of this. However, we do know that devastating legislation can get considered and passed at the snap of a finger. And so we want to be here this upcoming week as a rapid response team to be ready for whatever comes our way, and to be ready to push back if anything is targeting our communities. And so we're going to invite folks that have been watching and asking themselves, what can we do, to sign up for an action next week, Monday through Friday. There's going to be plenty of work to do to really push back and make sure that we are responsive to what happens in this session. And then, of course, in terms of education, people need to know. At the end of the day, it is the bottom line. People in the districts frequently don't know what their representatives are doing, and we'll be there to tell them, and to then connect them to their representative or state senator's office around what happens in the legislative session next week. So we want to be prepared, and that's where we will be next week. So really want to ground this day in the need for action, that just as easily and as much hard work goes into making these wins, and the rights that have been earned and gained, they have to be protected as well, because as we've seen in this legislative sessions this year already, there's just so many communities that are on the table to be attacked, and we have to stand together if we're gonna fight against it. So I did want to close out here by sharing information. I know, Ephraim, you came here with the Contigo Fund. You'd like to turn it over to you for ways that we can stay connected, and ways people can get involved, and what people should know about your org.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, so at Contigo Fund, we were just rooted after the Pulse incident, and Contigo Fund basically funds, smaller organizations looking to start something, looking to continue a program or something like that. So your best options is staying in tune with whenever Contigo Fund opens, these basically when we're giving, the money away to these organizations, fill out the forms, fill out the information, provide us details so we can grant these funds to you all so you can continue the programming, especially if it's a true cause. We're always having, these open sessions as well. And, there's other organizations out there that we've worked with that, are definitely looking into these type of programmings. We have Divas the Dialogue, we have Q Latinx, we have Hope Community Center, that they're not fully looking to get, into politics, but they're definitely pushing, for education as to, how we can better our youth and get them educated when it comes to these type of attacks in the community. So yeah, that's one of the things that mainly we do. I myself am a big advocate. I've learned to not let my voice be silenced, so I'm everywhere that I can help, and stuff like that. And definitely, being an immigrant myself, a queer immigrant who's under DACA, your vote is very important for me because I cannot vote, unfortunately. And if we're voting for the wrong people, then that puts deferred action or DACA in danger. And well, there goes little old me. So, that's all I can say.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, and really glad to have you here. And would like to open it for closing remarks for what you'd like to ask of the audience, or ways that people can stay in touch with any advocacy work that you're doing.
So, I'll just say, again, like I said earlier, the call to action was yesterday. Please, if we're going to make a change, we have to go through. We have to keep our promises. We don't want to look like Marco Rubio. We want to push, because one thing that is real is being comfortable. When you get comfortable, things like this happen. They find ways to go under the table and attack us, and then we're kind of left like, what's going on? We always have to be on our toes. Let's work together as communities, no matter, our skin tone, no matter where we come from, because at the end of the day, human rights are everybody's rights, and they think that they can play with that. I don't think so.
For myself, I think if I could part with a couple words would be, what we're facing right now in our country, this rise of far right-wing fascism, of the dehumanization of individuals who do not fit a certain mold based on their view, and the rise of hate against LGBTQ individuals, of people of color, of immigrants, of everything. It didn't just happen 2 years ago. It didn't just start with Trump. Trump is someone who capitalized and took advantage of something that's been building for a long time. And so what I would hope to be able to impart is that every day that we live, every day we should treat it as a day that we must in some way defend and protect and fight for our rights, our liberties, and for the life of this democracy. What we saw on January 6th was something that didn't just happen overnight and didn't just happen over a couple years. And so what I would hope to impart upon you is how important your voice is, how important your involvement, whether it's just simply making sure you show up at the polls every single time, helping someone ride out to the polls, but that there is no room or time for us, whether to be complacent or comfortable, or believe that we live in a world that's modernized and, those are all things of the past and those ideas don't exist anymore. I think we get caught up in whether it's technology or the modern world, where a lot of us really believe a lot of the same things, but we are still in a world where folks still are active and after this legislation that comes after folks who are not like them, dehumanizes them, and threatens their lives. And so please, after this, panel, if there's anything you take away, is that you are important in this process. You are somebody that has a powerful voice and can make meaningful change, and somebody that can help protect our future to make sure that those that come after us have the ability to flourish with the same rights and privileges, and even maybe more than we've ever had before, as we did. And so don't get complacent, get motivated, and know that even though we feel disenfranchised, even though we feel that sometimes our voice doesn't matter, if at any point it did matter, it is right now, or they would not be doing what they're doing, because what they're trying to do is silence your voice. And this is our opportunity to make sure that they know that there's not a time now or in the future that we're ever going to be quiet or be silenced. And so I encourage you to get involved, and I encourage you to believe in yourself and the future that you believe in. Thank you.
And on my end, what I have to say is, so if you are someone who is able to vote, make sure that you are updated on the current changes to voting laws. We just dropped a link with some resources on the comment section so you can find that, because we've been through 2 years of changes to voting laws, and they have not been changed to make our voting process easier so that everybody who can vote is able to do so in their preferred manner. No, they've actually been crafted in a way to make voting harder, in a way to crack down on how we can return our vote by mail ballots and who can assist us. Even to crack down, like if we can get water in line waiting to go into the voting booth. So please keep yourself updated and be involved. If you are not able to vote, you see, we always keep talking about voting, 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 but that's not, it's not just a magical solution to our issues. There's also more ways in which we can be involved, particularly with advocating with local elected officials, and that includes even the local supervisors of elections. If you didn't know, the people that run the elections in Florida, each county operates differently. So there's 67 counties. There's 67 ways in which you can advocate to make sure that your community's needs are being met. But also, if you're able to donate to community groups who are uplifting the voices of LGBTQ people, do so. Or even just by re-sharing this video on Facebook, you're doing something to help spread the voice and bring awareness to how we have to continue fighting, because if we don't, then our community is going to continue facing greater danger than it already is.
Awesome. Well, perfectly said, y'all. And of course, special thank you to Ricardo, to Efrain, to Michael, to Juan for being a part of this panel and bringing this all together. Really, really want to reemphasize this is a day, international day, all across the world, united against the hate that has been targeting the LGBTQ community, and really want to ground us in the call to action to really come together and to make sure that we're making our voices heard, just as has been said. So thank you all so much for being a part of this panel. Thank you for tuning in.
Before you go, if I might, I know we're almost done out of time, but I do want to say we always do these panels, and I
Yeah, well, we'll host another panel to get all of the input together. So I think until Juan comes back, but we're just closing out. Thank you all so much for being a part of this panel, and let's speak out together today. Take some time, and thank you all again.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very